Among the Judeo-Christian vital virtues and principles, the sixth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth, has always seemed to me overweening and incongruous. Overweening when I was young, more and more incongruous as I grew. In the context of our sermon class last summer, I took it as catalyst for my topic. The first clause seems excessive taken at face value and compared to the other more serious commandments. The second clause makes no logical sense when appended to the first. At the shallowest level, you could say, if you sass your parents, God will zot you. Unitarian Universalists don't leave things at the shallowest level, however. In that frame of reference, number 6 doesn't rise to the seriousness of thou shalt not kill. Primed to be glib and sanctimonious, I was ready to quote great literary minds, especially Unitarian Universalists, who surely would have parsed the sixth already. Could I be the only one who thinks this commandment is really about DNA? As Samantha asked when I showed her my text, what does it mean to honor that which gives you life? The need to express the best DNA we all got from a mother and father, who got it from their mothers and fathers, and so on. That, for me, would place number 6 in a more serious category, with other rules for perpetuation of culture, DNA of biologists and firefighters, of teachers and librarians, of Michelangelos and Misty Copelands, all desirable for our species' future. I found my topic not embraced in the literature. Also, the subject seems dry and pedantic, especially considering realities we confronted as last year slouched toward its end. The Las Vegas shooting, the brush fires, the mudslides which inevitably followed, the Parkland massacre. I looked at my sermon Word document and just couldn't be glib anymore. It didn't sit right with me to present a disquisition on the relevance of parental authority as I watched Florida parents, demolished by their grief, pick themselves up and march for the lives of the young survivors. All moments when people felt the need to find what gives them life, what some really mean when they offer thoughts and prayers. 50 years ago next month, 2 things happened in the same week. Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and the class of '68 graduated Pasadena High. Like the Parkland students, we wanted to have sober, serious discussions. The authorities just wanted us to memorize our place in line for the Rose Bowl commencement. Unlike the Parkland students, we did not rise up and march. Rather, filled with self-doubt, we backed up into our warrens of anxiety and tried to be college-bound. In 1968, many of us were unable to figure out what gave us life. The 60s passed, the 70s and Watergate came and went, the Reagan years ensued, as did the complete breakdown of communication between my parents' generation and mine. By the 80s and 90s, that was supplanted by my solicitousness of them as they advanced in age. In the story for all ages, I intended to reveal that the commandments were meant to give the newly freed Israelites direction and foundation from which to build a stable community. DNA in the time of Moses did not exist as the double helix familiar to us, rather as respect and emulation of their deep ancestry for many of the same reasons we honor biologists, firefighters, teachers, librarians, sculptors, and dancers. I feel the 6 commandments' 2 halves don't fit together well unless one transposes it into a modern idea. I consider the traditional view of number 6 as fine as far as it goes. Respect your elders and sing a chorus of teach your children. The Israelites in Moses' time were well recommended to look farther back along the generations to those who had met challenges, thus assuring that the community would survive and thrive. They honored what had given their ancestors life. rather than what might be sold to them to lengthen their days on earth. In order to resolve what to me was cognitive dissonance between the two clauses, and to arrive at the Israelites' conclusion, I searched sources written since that time. I looked to Joseph Campbell, who tells stories of the Grail Knights. I invoke the Standing Rock Water Protectors, First Nations people who pray to Father Sky and Mother Earth. Finally, I ask that we, today, honor all things antecedent and honorable. In Campbell's Transformations of Myth Through Time is the story of how Parsifal misconstrued respect for authority and thereby completely failed in his quest. He was a compassionate knight. He meets the wounded Fisher King in the latter's sumptuous castle at a wonderful feast. He is moved by his own compassion to ask what ails the king, what might heal him. He worries that knights aren't supposed to ask questions of kings, thus the authority of society defeats him. There is a Grail question, and his failure to ask it causes all the opulence and potential healing to disappear. Castle, king, courtiers, and comestibles, all gone. Parsifal didn't lead with his heart and failed his own ancestral DNA. Author, activist, and TV commentator Tom Hartman relates in his book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, in a section called Younger and Older Cultures, that we might do well to consider ancient wisdom we once knew but have forgotten. Hartman relates how white European obsession with conquest, 200 years of forced assimilation into white European colonization, is regarded by Australian Aboriginal people as the great forgetting. In his own search for lost ancient wisdom that gives him life, Hartman studies the genealogy of his own family. He wonders how his Norwegian ancestors' thoughts and actions may echo through his own DNA. Today, as the American empire is dying, we find new respect for the First Nations. A blog post from Colombia elucidates how native, nature-honoring spirituality was overwhelmed by white capitalism and its abiding Christian crusading mentality. It reads, "They did not consider themselves ruling over nature, but as part of nature. Humanity was sacred, but so were the animals and vegetation that sustained it. Even the soil, the minerals, and the rest of the material world were part of a great chain of being." The monograph continues. Resolution of the ecological crisis will force us to revisit the beliefs of the people who preceded us on this continent, whose attitude toward nature was inherently more respectful. The respect given nature was ultimately respect that humanity gave itself, since we are part of nature ourselves. Among the water protectors who stood against the Dakota Access Pipeline, which under the best of circumstances would ruin the surrounding ecosystem, was Doug Pineda, a native purveyor of spiritual wisdom. He explains water protectors' core values. In our sweat lodge, we use the elements stone, earth, water, air. We are connected to the earth. We are connected to the water. We live with the earth. The more we are connected, the more spiritual we are. It is that straightforward at its core. My own ruminations over the commandment are not my first exploration of the past of the universe. What seemed to me a lackluster response of some Methodists of my acquaintance to the shock doctrine perpetuated against Central and South Americans by greedy North Americans of the Chicago School propelled me toward activist spirituality. The first time I was in a UU church, where I expected to find activists, was for musical purposes. The highest expressions of music and spirituality for me were always inextricably bound. UUism also enabled learning not only about Native American spirituality, but about Wicca, the primarily Celtic practices of which are rooted in deep history and worship of nature. In what shaman astrologer Caroline Casey calls this time of dire beauty, we all recall a father and mother. We all have ancestry as far back as the earth. Every one of us grew from the earth, the water, the air. Now that the whole life-sustaining system is under stress, we must look deeply beyond the commandment by honoring what gives us all life and sustains life before the species that make up this unique planet wink out. I ask us all to honor our fields and our aquifers, that our days may be long upon the earth. Honor our mountains and leave their tops intact, that our days may be long upon the earth. Honor our oceans and do not use them as underwater battlefields. Honor our islands and pay attention when the storms intensify. Honor our pollinators and our apex predators, that our days may be long upon the earth. Honor our firefighters and teachers, our librarians and medical researchers. Honor our artists and musicians, our sculptors and dancers, that our souls may have surcease. Honor our veterans. That they may know the recovery of their souls. And if they realize their service has been heisted by profiteers, honor the flinging of their medals. Honor our children and their children, so that they will not be lured into foreign entanglements that render them unable to function except as killing machines, that our days may be long upon the earth. Honor all that gives us life. Blessed be. By the way, the Grail question is, whom does the Grail serve?